You really think you can tell me what to do in my own home? Jordan Ellis's voice was calm, but carried the weight of someone who had seen far more than her 29 years should allow, echoing through the narrow hallway of her suburban house as the blue and red lights from 30 police cruisers flickered against the walls. The rain had started just minutes earlier, bouncing off the roof and the asphalt driveway in soft, chaotic rhythms, soaking the edges of the welcome mat where her boots were planted, and the scent of wet earth mixed with the faint tang of ozone from the flashing lights. Each officer's flashlight cut through the darkness in sharp, trembling beams, illuminating the tense faces lined with disbelief and rigid authority, and the hum of their radios buzzed beneath the low murmur of whispered commands, creating a soundtrack that made every heartbeat in the room thrum like a drum. Jordan's fingers hovered over the edge of her kitchen counter, tracing the cold granite as if grounding herself to the present, eyes flicking between the cluster of officers, the flashing lights outside, and the small, framed photographs on the wall. A family she had lost years ago, moments frozen in time, smiling back at her as if urging calm. Her phone rested against her hip, the screen dark, its potential power latent yet undeniable, and she drew a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the pulse of rain on the windows, the chill of the storm creeping under the door, the quiet creak of the floorboards beneath her shifting weight. Captain Harrison Blackwell stepped forward, the tallest among them, his polished badge reflecting the strobe-like lights from the patrol cars, and the way he held his shoulders rigid, chin lifted, exuded an unquestioned command, yet there was a flicker, barely perceptible, of uncertainty in his gaze as he measured Jordan. A pause hung heavy in the air, punctuated only by the distant roll of thunder, and in that silence Jordan allowed herself a small, private acknowledgement. She had anticipated this, prepared for this, understood that authority without insight was fragile. Her lips curved ever so slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the truth she carried, the knowledge of what could be done and what consequences would ripple through layers far beyond this immediate standoff. The rain intensified, pattering against the wide front windows in a rhythmic crescendo, reflecting off the sleek surfaces of her living room in fractured, shimmering patterns. Jordan's stance shifted, subtle but deliberate, the weight of her body pressing into the polished hardwood, eyes steady, gaze unwavering as she raised her phone slowly, the glow of the screen illuminating the determination etched in every line of her face. Outside, the officers exchanged glances, their earlier confidence wavering, a subtle tension knitting through the group as the realization of the unexpected began to settle, and the glow of the storm combined with the reflections from the lights painted the room in pulses of color that made every shadow dance. Jordan's voice, quiet but clear, sliced through the ambient noise. She informed them, concisely, that the chain of command they relied upon would be disrupted, that every action they were attempting carried implications far beyond their immediate perception, that a single connection she had, long cultivated, precise, unyielding, was enough to shift the balance of power entirely. In those moments, the room seemed to stretch, the walls absorbing the tension, the air thick with the sharp scent of rain and ozone, and each officer felt the subtle quake of authority unmoored, as if the foundation beneath them had shifted imperceptibly but irrevocably. Jordan's hand hovered above the phone, thumb poised to confirm the call, and time itself seemed to hold, every droplet of rain frozen in its descent against the stormy backdrop. Then, slowly, deliberately, she pressed dial, and the low hum of anticipation seemed to amplify, intertwining with the rhythm of the storm, the flashing lights, the soaked driveway, and the steady, unyielding calm of a woman who had nothing to fear but whose insight had the power to remake the moment entirely. The line of patrol cars stretched across the wet street like a regiment frozen in place, their engines idling softly under the muted glow of streetlights. Jordan Ellis moved through the living room with measured steps, each one resonating on the hardwood floor, the rhythm of her movements steady against the background of distant thunder. She could feel the vibration of her phone in her pocket, a subtle pulse that matched the steady beat of her own heart. Each pulse a reminder that her choice in the next moments would dictate the direction of events unfolding outside her walls. The officers remained clustered at the front, their flashlights creating sharp, slanted lines across the walls and ceiling. illuminating family photographs, the soft pattern of a wool rug, and the gentle curve of the staircase. A thin mist of rain had entered with the last gust of wind, leaving the windows streaked and the air carrying the scent of wet pavement and pine from nearby trees. Jordan leaned slightly over the counter, eyes scanning the room with calculated awareness, noting the layout, the points of visibility, the angles from which she could be observed, and the way the shadows interacted with the light. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the wall clock, and the rhythmic tapping of her fingertips against the edge of the counter created a counterpoint to the chaotic energy outside, a private cadence that allowed her mind to focus. She thought about the chain of authority she had contacted, the network of support she could leverage, the knowledge that her actions were legitimate, grounded in law and procedure, and yet carried a weight that the officers had no context to understand. Outside, a slight movement in the crowd of uniforms caught her attention, a subtle glance exchanged between two officers, their expressions flickering from certainty to uncertainty, as if the air itself had shifted beneath them. Jordan adjusted her stance, shoulders back, eyes forward, breath steady, projecting calm confidence that contrasted sharply with the visible tension around her. Each second stretched longer than the last, the rain pattering in uneven rhythms against the roof, echoing softly through the rooms and hallways, creating a soundtrack that made the moments feel suspended in time. She moved to the window, peering through the streaked glass, noting the reflections of light bouncing across puddles on the driveway, the silhouettes of figures frozen in anticipation, and the diffuse glow of streetlights behind them. Her hand rested lightly on the windowsill, a grounding gesture that allowed her to absorb the scene without being swept away by it, her focus remaining on the phone in her pocket and the connection she had established moments ago. The room seemed to contract around her, every detail sharp and immediate. The smoothness of the granite countertop, the faint scent of coffee lingering from earlier in the day, the texture of the rug under her feet. Her gaze returned to the doorway as a single officer stepped forward slightly, the others following in a hesitant rhythm, uncertainty rippling through the group, their confidence ebbing under the invisible pressure she exerted. Jordan raised her phone again, the glow illuminating her focused expression, the screen casting a soft light that danced across her features, highlighting determination and poise. She took a measured breath, inhaling the cool, damp air and exhaled slowly, allowing the rhythm to synchronize with the faint patter of rain and the distant roll of thunder. The scene outside and the calm within created a tense juxtaposition, the officers' shadows stretching long and wavering on the wet street, while inside, Jordan remained an unshakable center, the gravity of her presence pulling subtly at the uncertain crowd. Every reflection on the glass, every movement in the dimly lit room, every subtle shift in the soundscape of rain, wind, and distant engines coalesced into a symphony of anticipation, a narrative that balanced on her composure and the measured execution of her choices. Her fingers brushed the phone screen, a gentle reminder of the action she had initiated and the responses she expected, the unseen chain of authority moving toward resolution, while the officers outside remained caught in their own web of uncertainty, their previous certainty dissolving under the weight of an unseen counterbalance that Jordan embodied completely. The air seemed to hum with potential energy, the rain falling in shimmering threads against the windows, catching light from both inside and out, while Jordan stood at the center, calm, deliberate, a quiet fulcrum around which the tension pivoted, ready to transform the uncertainty into resolution through her precise, unwavering control. The faint vibration of the phone in Jordan Ellis's hand had become a quiet drumbeat of anticipation, each pulse echoing through the still air of her living room as she moved to the window and peered out at the line of patrol cars stretching down the street. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, each droplet catching the soft glow of the streetlights, creating reflections that danced across the wet pavement, a subtle reminder of the storm that had passed, but not yet released its tension. Captain Harrison Blackwell stood at the center of the group, his posture still rigid, his gaze flicking repeatedly toward Jordan's illuminated window, uncertainty creasing the lines of his face as the implications of her call began to ripple through the ranks. The other officers shifted uneasily, the click of boots on wet asphalt blending with the distant rumble of thunder that had faded but lingered like a memory. Jordan's eyes scanned the driveway, noting the angles, the spacing of vehicles, the faint shadows of figures frozen mid-step, every detail absorbed into her awareness without a hint of panic. She took a slow breath, inhaling the damp, earthy air that had seeped in through a slightly open window, and exhaled deliberately, letting the rhythm of her breath synchronize with the subtle patter of rain still clinging to the roof above. Inside, the house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of a wall clock, and the occasional creak of the floor under her weight, creating a calm counterpoint to the tension outside. Jordan's fingers traced the edge of the counter lightly, grounding herself in the moment, her gaze unwavering, projecting a quiet certainty that contrasted sharply with the hesitation evident in the officers outside. She could sense the shifting dynamics, the subtle exchanges of glances, the half-formed whispers carried on the damp air as Captain Blackwell gestured toward his team, signaling them to pause, to reconsider, to assess the situation through a lens they had not expected to encounter. The rain reflected off the windshield of the lead patrol car, casting fragmented light across the driveway, shimmering against the wet asphalt, and Jordan allowed her eyes to follow those fleeting patterns, letting the calm of observation reinforce the quiet power she held. Her thumb hovered above the screen of her phone, a small but potent instrument of influence, the glow illuminating the determination etched into her features as she prepared to maintain the connection she had initiated, knowing that patience, timing, and precision were as important as the call she had made. Outside, a gentle wind rustled the leaves of the trees lining the street, adding a soft layer of ambient sound to the tableau, and Jordan adjusted her stance, shoulders back, feet planted firmly on the hardwood floor, radiating calm authority that seemed to ripple through the air and reach even beyond the glass. Each officer's reflection in the window flickered with the interplay of light, shadow, and raindrops, their confidence waning as they processed the reality of the situation, while Jordan's posture remained a steady fulcrum, the epicenter of focus and control. She breathed again, slowly, evenly, letting the rhythm of the storm outside and the soft heartbeat of the house within synchronize with her own, each inhale and exhale reinforcing the clarity of purpose and the quiet power of knowledge that now defined the space between her and the cluster of uniformed figures outside. The soft click of the phone being unlocked echoed slightly in the room as she readied to take the next step, each small movement deliberate, measured, and filled with intent, a testament to preparation and awareness. The reflective surfaces of the polished countertops and hardwood floors mirrored the subtle light, creating a dynamic play of highlights and shadows that danced across the walls, framing her in a glow of composed confidence. As the seconds stretched and the officers outside shifted uneasily, the delicate balance of anticipation held, a taut wire of suspense that Jordan navigated with steady precision, embodying the quiet, calculated influence that had begun to undo the certainty of those who had come to impose authority without understanding, leaving the night charged with possibility and poised on the edge of resolution. Jordan Ellis stood at the window, the soft glow of her phone illuminating her calm face as she watched the officers hesitate under the dim streetlights, their reflections scattered across the wet pavement like fragments of a disrupted formation. The drizzle had eased to a fine mist, each droplet catching the light and creating a shimmering pattern that moved slowly with the wind, almost like a visual echo of the tension that now filled the street. She shifted slightly, her eyes narrowing in focus as she observed subtle gestures among the officers, the small adjustments of feet, the glances exchanged, the whispered words just audible over the distant hum of idling engines, each signaling uncertainty creeping into their ranks. Inside the house, the air was cool and carried the faint scent of rain mixed with the lingering aroma of coffee from earlier in the evening, grounding her senses and amplifying the clarity of her thoughts. Jordan moved toward the staircase, her footsteps deliberate and steady, each step a measured sound against the polished hardwood, a rhythm that contrasted with the erratic flashes of light and color outside. Her hand rested lightly on the banister as she assessed the lines of sight, the angles at which she could be observed, and the way shadows shifted with the subtle changes in illumination, absorbing every detail with quiet intent. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the wall clock created a subtle backdrop that emphasized the contrast between the calm within and the tension beyond the walls, a juxtaposition that made each breath feel heavier, each heartbeat more pronounced. Jordan reached for the window latch, adjusting the angle to reduce glare and maximize visibility, her reflection merging with the scattered lights outside, creating a dual perspective that allowed her to observe and remain unseen simultaneously. The officers outside were moving with increased caution now, some shifting positions, others exchanging longer looks, their earlier confidence dissipating under the unseen weight of Jordan's presence and the authority she had invoked. She lifted her phone, the screen casting a soft, steady light that danced across her determined features, and took a slow breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs and steady her mind. The wet driveway reflected the flashing lights in elongated, distorted shapes, and Jordan's eyes followed each movement, noting the minute signs of hesitation and recalibration, the subtle human reactions to a situation that had grown unpredictable. Her gaze moved over the familiar interior of her home, the framed photographs, the patterned rug, the polished surfaces, each detail reinforcing a sense of control, a silent reminder that she occupied this space with purpose and understanding. The rain's gentle patter continued against the roof, a rhythmic percussion that seemed to synchronize with the soft hum of electronics, the distant sounds of vehicles, and the slow, deliberate breathing that filled the quiet rooms. Jordan's hand hovered over her phone again, poised to act, a single motion away from furthering the chain of events she had set into motion, while outside, the officers' hesitation became more pronounced, their coordination faltering, subtle glances revealing doubt and uncertainty. Each second felt stretched, weighted with potential and consequence, the interplay of light, shadow, sound, and presence creating a tense tableau in which Jordan remained the center of unshakable composure, poised to guide the unfolding moment with calm, calculated authority. She exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of her breath align with the mist and reflections, a quiet but deliberate act that reinforced her unyielding focus and the measured patience that had begun to turn the tide of the confrontation outside. Jordan Ellis exhaled slowly, letting the calmness she had cultivated fill the room, the soft light of her phone casting long shadows across the hardwood floor as she considered the next steps. Outside, the officers had paused, their movement hesitant, their eyes flicking toward one another as if searching for reassurance, the rhythm of the rain on the driveway mixing with the faint hum of the patrol car engines to create a tense but ordered soundtrack. She walked toward the center of the living room, her feet making soft, measured contact with the floor, the polished surfaces reflecting the faint light in fractured patterns that seemed to mirror the uncertain formation of the group beyond the windows. Jordan's gaze swept the room with careful attention, noting details that others might overlook. The precise placement of furniture, the subtle angles of light across the walls, the way reflections shifted as the mist outside continued to swirl against the windows. Her fingers rested lightly on the edge of the counter, a grounding touch, while her mind reviewed the connections she had already established, the sequence of communications and contingencies that had been carefully prepared in advance. The drizzle outside had softened to a gentle whisper against the glass, each droplet catching the glow of the streetlights and scattering it in soft, moving patterns, and Jordan allowed herself a moment to observe the way light and shadow danced across the room, reinforcing the sense of control she projected. Captain Harrison Blackwell stepped forward, a slight crease of concern forming on his brow, and Jordan's eyes met his across the space between them, her calm, unwavering stare creating a subtle shift in the dynamic, a silent acknowledgement that the balance of authority had begun to tilt. The officers behind him mirrored his hesitation, some shifting their weight, others lowering their flashlights slightly, the collective body language revealing the erosion of certainty. Jordan moved toward the staircase, each step deliberate and quiet, the sound of her shoes against the hardwood providing a subtle rhythm that contrasted with the erratic reflections outside, and she paused to glance back, taking in the room and its calm order, a stark contrast to the swirling uncertainty beyond the walls. The scent of rain, the faint aroma of coffee lingering from earlier, and the clean, cool air combined to create a sensory anchor, allowing her to maintain clarity and focus. Her hand hovered over her phone once more, the glow illuminating the determination on her face, and she pressed gently, initiating the next phase of communication, a deliberate act that would ripple through the chain of authority she had accessed, reinforcing the consequences of action and inaction alike. Outside, a breeze stirred, shifting the mist and causing reflections on the driveway to waver, each movement a subtle signal that the balance of tension was dynamic and responsive, and Jordan remained at the center, her poise and composure radiating outward, influencing the scene in ways that were immediate yet unseen. Every detail mattered. The positioning of the officers, the angle of the light, the faint echo of the drizzle, the tactile sensation of the floor beneath her feet. And Jordan absorbed it all, a quiet conductor orchestrating a sequence that would ensure clarity, compliance, and a resolution that honored the integrity she carried within. She exhaled once more, steady and deliberate, and the room seemed to hold its breath with her, the calm inside, and the shifting uncertainty outside creating a suspended, almost cinematic space in which every decision, every gesture, and every moment counted toward the inevitable unfolding of events. Jordan Ellis pressed her thumb against the screen, feeling the subtle vibration as the call connected, the soft glow casting a steady light across her face and the polished surfaces of the living room. Outside, the patrol cars remained in formation, yet the officers had become visibly hesitant, the coordinated rhythm of their movements faltering under the weight of the unseen authority she had summoned. The drizzle had almost ceased, leaving a faint mist in the air that softened the edges of the flashing lights, their reflections rippling across puddles and the wet asphalt in slow, mesmerizing patterns. Jordan took a deliberate step back from the window, her eyes scanning the entire street and the positioning of each figure, noting subtle shifts in posture and the small gestures that betrayed uncertainty and hesitation. Inside, the soft ticking of the clock, the quiet hum of appliances, and the faint patter of rain against the roof created a symphony of calm, allowing her mind to remain clear and focused on the unfolding events. She moved toward the center of the room, adjusting her stance, feeling the polished hardwood under her feet, grounding herself in the space she controlled, her gaze unwavering, her posture projecting confidence that seemed to reach even beyond the walls. The officers outside exchanged glances, some lowering their flashlights slightly, others stepping back, the earlier certainty and composure replaced by a cautious, almost measured, evaluation of the unexpected dynamics they faced. Jordan's thumb lingered on the phone, her other hand resting lightly against the counter, a grounding gesture, her focus entirely on the line of communication she had established and the ripple effects that would follow. The air inside the house felt charged yet serene, the contrast between the tense outside world and the composed interior emphasizing the quiet power she held in those moments. She exhaled slowly, synchronizing her breath with the soft rhythm of the fading rain and the hum of engines beyond the windows, letting the calm reinforce the clarity and control she maintained. Every detail mattered, the shimmer of light across wet surfaces, the subtle shifts in the officer's weight and stance, the interplay of reflections on the windows, and the way shadows moved across the interior walls, all observed and absorbed by Jordan with precise awareness. The glow of the phone illuminated her focused expression, each feature composed, eyes steady, conveying the unshakable resolve of someone fully aware of the authority she wielded and the consequences of inaction. The mist outside swirled gently, distorting the light from the street lamps, creating a dynamic, almost cinematic effect that mirrored the shifting tension in the scene, and Jordan allowed herself a small, internal acknowledgement of how controlled, deliberate observation could influence the flow of events without a single word being raised. Her breath remained steady, her fingers poised, and in the quiet, charged moments, the officers outside seemed to pause, caught between protocol, expectation, and the growing realization that the situation had changed in ways they had not anticipated, all while Jordan stood at the center, calm, deliberate, and fully present, the fulcrum of a moment suspended between anticipation and resolution. Jordan Ellis shifted slightly, feeling the smooth surface of the hardwood floor beneath her feet and the faint vibration of her phone still in her hand, a quiet reminder that the line she had opened to authority far above the street outside remained active. The mist had begun to thin, and the reflections of the streetlights across the wet driveway shimmered with a gentle persistence, stretching and bending as if each droplet carried a story of hesitation and recalibration among the officers. Captain Harrison Blackwell moved cautiously at the front of the group, his posture still rigid but his movements now calculated, almost tentative, a stark contrast to the assertive confidence he had displayed moments earlier. The other officers followed, their steps uneven, their flashlights lowered slightly, casting softer, wavering beams across the damp asphalt, and Jordan noted each subtle change with precise attention, her eyes capturing every flicker of expression, every tilt of a head, every micro shift in stance. Inside, the living room felt expansive yet intimate, the faint scent of rain mixing with the lingering aroma of coffee from earlier, creating a familiar anchor that allowed her to remain fully centered, fully aware. Jordan adjusted her stance, shoulders back, spine straight, her gaze unwavering, radiating a calm certainty that seemed to fill the space and extend outward through the glass, an invisible presence that shifted the balance beyond the walls. The hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock punctuated the quiet, emphasizing the contrast between the controlled interior and the unpredictable tableau outside. Her thumb rested lightly on the phone, ready to engage further, while her other hand remained anchored to the edge of the counter, a subtle grounding gesture that reinforced both physical stability and mental clarity. Each detail mattered. The reflections on the wet driveway, the subtle changes in the officer's positioning, the way shadows played across the walls and floors inside, and the faint glimmer of light catching droplets on the windows. Jordan allowed herself a slow, steady breath, aligning with the rhythm of the rain, the faint breeze brushing against the house, and the soft, diffused light from the street lamps. Every fraction of a second stretched with significance, the tension of anticipation coiling like a spring ready to release. Yet Jordan remained the eye of the storm, composed, deliberate, observing and influencing without a single audible word. Outside, the officers shifted again, glances exchanged, uncertainty rippling through the ranks, as if each subtle gesture from Jordan communicated more than any spoken command could. The mist began to dissipate further, revealing the contours of the street, the parked cars, and the soft outlines of the officers in a tableau of paused authority, while Jordan maintained her measured calm, the soft glow of her phone reflecting on her determined expression, reinforcing the balance of control she held over the unfolding scene. The interplay of light, shadow, and reflection created a cinematic tension, a visual rhythm that mirrored the subtle power dynamics at work, and Jordan remained fully present in the center, her breath steady, movements deliberate, and her focus absolute, guiding the moment toward clarity and resolution with quiet, unshakable authority. Jordan Ellis felt the room settle around her as the faint mist outside began to lift, the soft gleam of streetlights reflecting in the puddles across the driveway and casting long, moving shadows that stretched toward the edges of the house. Her stance remained steady at the center of the living room, fingers lightly brushing the counter, her thumb poised above the phone, the glow illuminating the calm determination on her face. The officers outside had begun to shift subtly, their rigid formations softening, the earlier confidence now replaced by measured caution, glances exchanged and brief nods acknowledging the unexpected turn of events. The gentle hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock provided a quiet rhythm, underscoring the contrast between the still, deliberate movements inside and the cautious, tentative adjustments outside. Jordan's eyes moved over the living room, taking in the polished floors, the reflections on the surfaces, and the subtle interplay of light and shadow, absorbing every detail, every nuance, with the precision of someone fully attuned to the moment. A soft breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the damp, earthy scent of rain through the slightly open window, grounding her and reinforcing the clarity of focus she maintained. She shifted her weight slightly, aligning her posture, shoulders back, spine straight, eyes forward, projecting calm authority that seemed to radiate outward through the glass and influence the uncertainty lingering in the street. The officers hesitated as their flashlights flickered over the driveway, reflections catching in their eyes, subtle gestures betraying their internal recalibration as they realized the situation had moved beyond their immediate control. Jordan's hand hovered above the phone, her breathing slow and deliberate, each exhale reinforcing her composure, the quiet confidence she exuded shaping the space around her, turning the room into a focal point of clarity amid the shifting tension outside. The soft, fading drizzle continued to patter gently against the roof, each droplet refracting light in delicate patterns, while her gaze swept the room once more, noting angles, shadows, and the subtle shifts of reflection that created a dynamic visual map of her environment. She allowed herself a controlled breath, feeling the gentle rise and fall of her chest, syncing with the rhythm of the environment, the soft hum of technology, and the faint, rhythmic movement of water dripping from leaves onto the driveway, all creating a measured cadence that grounded her. Every flicker of movement outside, every subtle adjustment in the officer's posture, every reflection and shifting shadow, Jordan noted with acute awareness, each element contributing to a precise understanding of the evolving scene. The glow from her phone reflected softly across her features, accentuating the determination and calm composure that defined her presence. And as she adjusted slightly, taking in the interplay of light and motion both inside and outside, she remained fully aware, fully prepared, and entirely in control of the moment as it teetered on the edge of resolution. Jordan Ellis felt a subtle shift in the energy outside, the officers pausing mid-step, their flashlights wavering as if sensing the invisible authority she had invoked. The drizzle had nearly ceased, leaving only a fine mist that softened the edges of reflections on the driveway, each puddle catching the diffused glow of streetlights in a gentle, shimmering pattern. She moved to the center of the living room, feet firm on the polished hardwood, eyes scanning the scene beyond the glass as she assessed every detail, the angle of shadows, the spacing of vehicles, the slight gestures that revealed uncertainty in the ranks. Her hand hovered above the phone, glowing softly in the dim light, a quiet instrument of influence that had already begun to shift the balance of control. Inside, the room was filled with calm. The faint tick of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft scent of damp rain mixing with lingering coffee aroma. Each element anchored her, allowing Jordan to remain fully present and deliberate, her posture straight, shoulders back, breath slow and steady. Outside, Captain Harrison Blackwell gestured slightly, the group responding in measured movements, their previous confidence replaced by calculated caution as Jordan's composure projected outward through the glass. Reflections danced across the windows and floors, the interplay of light and shadow creating a subtle visual rhythm that mirrored the tension of the moment, and Jordan's gaze followed each shift, noting how hesitation had begun to ripple through the officers. She adjusted slightly, observing the dynamic tableau, the mist curling around the streetlights, the gentle ripple of water in puddles reflecting the interplay of light and shadow, each detail reinforcing the quiet authority she maintained. Her thumb pressed gently on the phone, a reminder of the chain of action she had set in motion, the call linking her to higher authority that had yet to be fully realized outside. The scene balanced between anticipation and resolution, every breath, every micro-movement inside the house mirroring the subtle shifts outside, the air heavy with expectation and calm determination. Jordan's focus remained absolute, the soft glow from her phone illuminating her expression of quiet resolve, her movements deliberate and purposeful, eyes fixed on the subtle cues that signaled the unfolding of the situation. She inhaled slowly, feeling the gentle rise of her chest and the soft exhale of air, letting the rhythm synchronize with the distant hum of engines, the faint patter of residual rain, and the delicate interplay of light reflecting across the interior surfaces. Every flicker of movement in the driveway, every hesitant step, every glance exchanged among the officers was observed with acute attention, and Jordan allowed the room and the subtle environmental cues to guide her assessment. She exhaled again, steady and controlled, her presence unwavering, and in that suspended moment, The balance of power held delicately between her composure and the officer's recalibrated uncertainty. The night air filled with anticipation, reflection, and the quiet assurance of a resolution shaped by clarity, precision, and deliberate action. Experience a gripping narrative where a determined young woman navigates a tense encounter with law enforcement, showcasing intelligence and composure under pressure. Witness how the female resident skillfully manages the situation, turning uncertainty into control while interacting with 30 officers and maintaining calm authority. This story highlights themes central to Black stories, emphasizing resilience and strategic thinking in moments of high tension. The scene demonstrates how the commanding officer responds to the unexpected, revealing human vulnerability and respect for decisiveness, a core element in Black stories that resonates through every interaction. As the female resident carefully observes reflections, shadows, and subtle movements, she exemplifies strategic patience and foresight, making this a compelling example of Black stories that combine suspense, moral clarity, and empowerment. Finally, the narrative culminates in a shift of authority and recognition of her measured actions, illustrating the impact of intelligence and presence in real-world scenarios, reinforcing the essence of Black stories and leaving viewers with a lasting impression of calm strength and moral influence. Create a realistic portrait of Jordan Ellis, a 28-year-old Black woman wearing a smart casual outfit with a dark blazer and jeans, standing confidently with a determined expression. Frontal view, urban nighttime background, cinematic lighting, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration, sharp focus, photorealistic, natural textures, subtle reflections, soft rain. Create a realistic portrait of Captain Harrison Blackwell, a 35-year-old white man wearing a formal police uniform with badge and epaulets, standing authoritatively. Frontal view, urban nighttime background, cinematic lighting, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration, sharp focus, photorealistic, natural textures, subtle reflections, soft rain.